San Francisco. Super Week. No off-season. This is the Sport Beach Clubhouse, where sport, culture, and marketing play on.
Hi, I'm Lisa Rosenberg, Global President, Consumer Brands at Allison Worldwide. I'm here at the Sport Beach Content Studio with Jon Persch, the Chief Commercial Officer for FIFA World Cup Boston. So Jon, what brings you to Super Bowl this week?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's a matchup between Boston and Seattle again, right? So it's a rematch of 2015 in the Super Bowl, but it's also a great opportunity to showcase the two host cities as well as San Francisco ahead of the World Cup this summer.
Okay, super. So I want to talk a little bit about Boston, and I know a little bit. My husband and all my in-laws are from Boston, but
right.
It is a city that is defined by its sort of deep sports fanaticism, if
right.
you will. They have traditions and arguably some of the most passionate and knowledgeable fans. So how does FIFA Boston plan to engage with and integrate into this sort of unique sports culture that I think is very unique to the city? And then what are you doing in Boston to differentiate from some of the other host cities?
Well, I mean, it's a great question. We call ourselves the City of Champions. So aside from a couple of baseball championships, one down the road in 95, we are the City of Champions. There are no other franchises throughout the entire United States that can claim more franchise titles than the Red Sox, the Bruins, the Celtics, and the Patriots. So we've got an incredible...
It does break my heart as a New Yorker.
I know it does. I know it does. And I lived in New York for years, but we're very, very proud of that. And so we do have a deep traditional sports culture in Boston, which I think we're enormously proud of. And I think bringing the idea of the world's largest sporting event, I mean, this is 48 teams, 109 matches, 3 countries between Canada, U.S., and Mexico for the World Cup. We'll host 7 games in Boston. We'll have the quarterfinals for the World Cup, and we're expecting over 1 billion global viewers to tune in. So this becomes an opportunity to tell the story of Boston to the world. And as we look to move into this, it's this idea of 250 years all having begun in Boston. So we're going to lean into the semi-quincentennial, and I practice that word a lot to let that roll off my tongue.
Excellent. Well done.
Thank you very much. But we get to use it as an opportunity to tell the sports story of Boston to the world while we're hosting the world.
No, I think that's terrific. Now, we talked, when we were chatting the other day about some of the, challenges living within the FIFA ecosystem. And so as you think about sort of the commercial landscape for mega events becoming more and more complex,
sure.
How is FIFA World Cup Boston's commercial strategy for 2026 evolving beyond traditional partnerships? Like, how are you creating deeper, more integrated partnerships with brands?
It's a great question. FIFA, obviously, with their global affiliates, their commercial affiliates, we always want to keep our moral compass pointed in the right direction. So we have an obligation to tell those stories. But as you said, right, it's narrowly defined, and what we need to be able to do is bring to life the story of Boston. There's so many iconic brands that were born in Boston. Some are allowed to be part of this, and some are not. So what we really want to lean into is the ethos of Boston, the authenticity of Boston. So you take a New Balance by way of example. They can't be an official partner of FIFA because of Adidas, but they were born in Boston in 1906. So how do we bring them to life and their heritage and their authenticity? Chris Davis is an amazing CMO, as I know you know Chris. So this becomes a story about it all started here. Here is actually Boston, and it is New Balance, and they began in 1906. Same thing with Dunkin'. Dunkin' is blocked because of McDonald's and Coca-Cola, but how do you tell Dunkin' they're not going to show up in their own hometown? We obviously need to make sure that we're defining Coca-Cola and McDonald's the way that we need to for FIFA, but then how does Dunkin' show up authentically to the world in Boston, having been born there in 1950? So it's this idea of storytelling that's authentic to their ethos, but more importantly, authentic to Boston.
I love that. But Dunkin' hasn't released their Super Bowl spot yet. So
they have not.
I'm waiting to see what they have cooked up. I am sort of curious, and maybe you can go just a little bit, if you're able to share,
sure.
Some of the plans. I know we talked about, you said New Balance is very involved, from a planning standpoint, they're on the board. Like, how do you look at your commercial partners and how they engage from a brand standpoint at what's arguably the biggest sporting event? in the world.
Yeah, I think one of the things, and I think everybody is acutely aware of ambush and guerrilla strategies, and that's going to happen. I think the one thing that I'm incredibly proud of all of our partners, that nobody wants to, right? Nobody is looking to impinge on FIFA's IP. Nobody is looking to associate themselves. As a matter of fact, they are very, very clear in terms of the guidelines and wanting to stay away from it. So the goal really becomes about Boston, and that's the storytelling. So the strategy of it all started here brings it to life in a way that people can be authentic to Boston, people can sort of riff off the idea of originality and the ethos of 250 years, but then be able to tell an authentic story while living in the same ecosystem as FIFA's global partners.
That's really interesting. Have you started to see some of the fan fervor increase in the city, or is it a little early? What are you seeing?
Well, I mean, I think the run that the Patriots have had has sort of tempered that a little bit. I was talking with my colleague this morning and saying, we haven't seen some of the World Cup branding yet here in San Francisco, who's another host city. Obviously, they've had All-Star Game, they've got Super Bowl, so I think when we get back, we'll start to see this. We understand, I mean, we're incredibly proud of the draw that we have. We have Scotland playing twice. We have Norway playing twice. We'll host France. We'll host England, Ghana, Morocco, Haiti. So there's so many authentic cultural stories to tell. And then that with their own diverse tapestry of cultures that we already have in and around Greater Boston and the Commonwealth, making it an amazing summer.
Now that's excellent. So I thought this might be sort of an interesting question for you. We're here in the Bay Area. It's 2 days before the big game. It's sort of the pinnacle of U.S. sports marketing. And as you look to the summer, are there any lessons that you can take back from sort of the scale and commercial intensity that surrounds the Super Bowl ecosystem to sort of amplify, the World Cup's impact?
Yeah, I think the question that you hit on earlier, right? We are such a sports city, and we're so proud of that. I say all the time, though, that oftentimes we in Boston conflate this idea that we're such a proud sports city with so much heritage and history, but to be honest with you, we always win someplace else. So 50% of the Red Sox games are played someplace else, 50% of the Bruins games, the Celtics games where we win championships. Every Patriots Super Bowl has not been won in Boston. So the thing that we're looking at being able to do is to host something to scale, right? Again, the world's largest sporting event, 7 matches being played in Boston, but use that as a blueprint to move forward, to move Boston forward, to host large global scale events. So how do we bring an NFL draft to the city of Boston? How do we look forward to the 2031 Women's World Cup? So looking at how we scale up and scale down through authentic sports storytelling, not on a franchise level, not on a micro level, but more of a macro level. And that's the goal for this summer. The goal for this summer, and we're not going to get everything right, but we're going to take best practices and learning lessons and use that to propel Boston forward. We're looking at over $1 billion of economic impact in 39 days. 2.1 million visitors coming through Boston. That's before we even get to the tall ships and the other things that are happening over the course of the summer. So we have an obligation to get it right for our fans. We have an obligation to get it right for our residents, but then also using that. Sports is a business. It's an incredibly powerful business.
Yeah.
Right. So using that economic impact and through the lens and the power of sport, not on a franchise level, but on a global level.
I love that. Okay, my last question for you.
Yeah.
Football or football?
Oh, I actually got asked this question, right? And I've lived all over the world. I was living in Spain before I came back home to Massachusetts to take this job. So I now say football as I'm talking about soccer. I find it very, very hard now to say soccer. But we're in a football town right now. It is the Super Bowl. So I'm going to say football, but that's referring to the Patriots. So go Pats.
Okay, so that changes on Monday.
Yes, that does change on Monday. I'll put the little tilde on top of it, so it'll be football moving forward on Monday.
All right, well, Jon, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Lisa. Lovely to be here.
Okay, great.